All right, so you're gearing up for the CCSP exam.
Yep.
That's a big step in your cloud security career, so kudos to you for taking on this challenge.
Definitely a challenge.
Today, we're diving deep into your study materials,
Oh, yeah.
crucial business continuity and disaster recovery concepts that the CCSP just loves to test. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's unpack it.
I'm seeing a lot about availability.
Right.
Is that like the holy grail of cloud security?
It's one of them for sure.
Okay.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Confidentiality keeps your data secret. Integrity keeps it accurate.
Right.
And availability makes sure it's there when you need it.
Okay.
Like, imagine a bank system's going down during peak hours.
Oh, wow.
That's an availability nightmare that directly hits the bottom line.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a disaster.
Like, big time.
So how do we even start planning for something like that?
Yeah, that's the question.
Business impact assessment?
The BIA?
Yeah.
It's the foundation of ANY solid BCDR plan.
Okay.
Basically, you're figuring out what hurts the business most if it goes down.
Okay.
Think critical applications, customer-facing services, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I noticed you flagged an example where hurricane damage to a data center was the top concern.
Yeah.
Makes the concept very real.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
But here's where my brain starts to melt a bit.
Okay.
How does cloud change this whole BCDR game?
Right.
Isn't the provider responsible for a lot of that?
That's the twist.
Okay.
It's shared responsibility now.
Okay.
The provider might have super resilient data centers.
Right.
But you still need to architect your applications and data for redundancy.
Okay.
Back to that hurricane.
Okay.
The provider handles the physical building.
Right.
But you choose to replicate your data across multiple regions, so even if one goes down,
Okay.
you're still in business.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's like a dance between what the provider offers and how smart we are leveraging their tools.
Exactly. And speaking of smart design,
Okay.
let's talk about resilient design, the art of eliminating single points of failure.
Oh, yes.
You flagged an example with a web application.
Yes.
Perfect illustration.
I was struggling with that one a bit.
Okay.
Can you walk me through it like I'm 5 years old, please?
All right. So imagine a basic website.
Okay.
You have a web server, a firewall,
Uh-huh.
and a connection to the internet.
Okay.
If that web server crashes, the whole site goes down.
Right.
That's your single point of failure.
Yeah, 1 weak link and it all crumbles.
Right. So we introduce redundancy.
Okay.
Instead of one web server, you have a cluster.
Okay.
Multiple servers running the same application.
Right.
If one fails,
Yeah.
the others pick up the slack seamlessly.
Uh-huh. So it's like a team effort.
Exactly.
But what about the other components?
Yeah.
Like that firewall you mentioned.
Same principle.
Okay.
Replace a single firewall with a high availability pair, one active one standing by, ready to jump in.
Okay.
And of course, you need redundant network links too.
Right.
So a single cable cut doesn't take down the whole site.
Okay, so clusters, backup, firewalls, multiple network links.
Got it.
Got it. But is that really all there is to resilient design?
That's a great question.
It feels almost too simple.
It's the foundation, but the CCSP wants you to think bigger.
Okay.
What if your cloud vendor goes bankrupt?
Oh.
Can your systems handle a Black Friday traffic surge?
Wow.
Resilient design considers all potential risks, not just component failures.
Wow, that's taking it up a notch.
It is.
So we're not just thinking about spare parts, but about the entire ecosystem.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that leads nicely into high availability, HA, and fault tolerance, FT.
Okay.
Two sides of the same coin, really.
Well, I break it down for us.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
The notes got a bit jumbled for me on this one.
Think of HA as having a backup ready to roll when something fails.
Okay.
Like that web server cluster, that's HA.
Got it.
FT is about making the individual components super robust.
Okay.
So they're less likely to fail in the first place.
So HA is about rapid recovery, and FT is about preventing failure altogether.
You got it.
Is there a best approach here?
It depends. It depends on the criticality of the system and your budget.
Right.
Some systems, like those handling financial transactions, need both HA and FT for maximum uptime.
Okay.
For less critical systems, you might lean more on one or the other.
Got it. So it's all about balancing those trade-offs.
Yes.
Cost versus risk.
Absolutely.
Now, in the notes, I see a bunch of FT techniques listed.
Yeah.
RAID, dual power supplies, NIC teaming.
Uh-huh.
Is this where things get really technical?
It can, but the CCSP wants you to understand the concepts, not necessarily the nitty-gritty details.
Okay.
Take RAID, for example.
Okay.
It's about using multiple disks to protect against data loss, but it's not a replacement for backups. That's a common misconception they might test you on.
Good point.
Yeah.
RAID is for preventing data loss from a single disk failure, not a full-blown disaster.
Exactly.
Speaking of disasters,
Okay.
the next section in my notes is disaster recovery.
All right.
Feels like we're shifting gears a bit here.
We are, and now we're talking about what happens when things go really wrong,
Okay.
beyond what your normal BC plan can handle.
Oh, wow.
Think hurricanes, ransomware attacks.
Oh.
Those scenarios where your primary systems are down and you need to get back up and running ASAP.
Okay, so this is about serious business.
It is.
What are the key ingredients of a rock-solid DR plan?
First, you need a clear process for initial response, containing the damage and getting any critical systems online immediately, even if it's just a temporary fix. Then comes assessment.
All right.
Figuring out the extent of the impact and what needs to be restored. Finally, there's execution.
But putting that recovery plan into action.
Gotcha.
And all of this is tied to something called DR metrics.
Metrics?
Yeah.
Like how we measure success in a disaster.
It is.
That seems counterintuitive.
It's actually essential. Metrics like recovery time objective, RTO, tell you how long you can afford to have a service down.
Right.
Recovery point objective, RPO, defines how much data loss is acceptable. These metrics help you prioritize what to recover first and what level of redundancy you need.
So it's about setting realistic expectations and making sure everyone is on the same page when chaos hits.
Exactly.
Okay, last thing I'm seeing for this section is backups.
All right, backups.
Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Just copy everything important and store it somewhere safe.
Backups. Simple in theory, surprisingly complex in practice. You have to consider different methods. Tape backups, disk-to-disk cloud storage.
Right.
And each comes with its own set of pros and cons. Okay, so more trade-offs to consider.
Always trade-offs.
And then there are the different types of backups.
Yes.
Full, differential, incremental. I got a bit lost in those definitions.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
A full backup is like taking a snapshot of your entire system. Differential backups. Copy only what's changed since your last full backup. Incremental backups.
Right.
Copy only the changes since the last backup.
Got it.
Whether full or incremental.
Okay.
The key trade-off is speed versus complexity when restoring.
Right.
Full backups are the slowest but simplest to restore.
Okay.
Incrementals are the fastest to create.
Gotcha.
But restoring them can be like putting a puzzle back together.
Ooh, that's a good way to remember it.
Glad it helps.
So the CCSP might throw tricky questions at us.
Oh, yeah, they will.
About which backup type is best in different scenarios.
Absolutely. They want you to understand the advantages and disadvantages of each approach. And this is where things get interesting. Most people think of backups only when disaster strikes.
Right.
But the truth is, they're incredibly useful for everyday tasks.
Oh, okay.
Like recovering accidentally deleted files.
Right.
Or rolling back a bad configuration change.
So backups are like the unsung heroes of IT.
They are.
Always there to save the day.
Always.
But in a real disaster scenario, what are some key considerations?
Yeah. What do you think about first?
I mean, you can't just restore everything at once, right?
You're right.
Okay.
Prioritization is key.
Okay.
Which systems are absolutely essential for the business to function?
Right.
Those need to be restored first.
That's it, yeah.
The CCSP might ask you about that decision-making process.
Makes sense. It's like triage for your IT infrastructure.
It is.
Anything else the CCSP might throw at us?
They love to test your understanding of efficiency.
Okay.
Remember that concept of non-persistence?
Yeah.
It's about only backing up unique data,
right,
not entire systems. Why waste time and resources backing up the same operating system over and over again?
Right.
If you can just rebuild it from scratch and restore the data.
So it's like backing up your personalized settings on your phone.
Exactly.
Not the entire operating system.
Exactly.
Clever.
It is.
Okay, now we're moving into disaster recovery sites.
Okay.
This feels big.
It is.
Like we're talking about full-blown alternate locations for our operation.
Exactly when your primary data center is toast.
Oh, gosh.
You need somewhere to go.
Yeah.
That's where disaster recovery sites come in.
Right.
They're those alternate facilities designed to keep your business running no matter what happens.
Got it.
And there are different types,
Okay.
each with its own pros and cons.
Ooh, this is where the CCSP could really throw some curveballs, right?
Definitely. They'll want you to know the difference
Okay.
between hot, warm, and cold sites.
Okay.
Think of them like levels of readiness.
Say, I'm all ears laid on me.
A hot site is like your data center's twin, fully operational and mirroring your production environment in real time.
Wow.
If disaster strikes, you can switch over almost instantly.
Okay.
Expensive, but it offers the fastest recovery time.
Wow. That's some next level preparedness.
It is.
But I can imagine it's not cheap.
Not at all.
Okay.
On the other end of the spectrum, you have cold sites.
Okay.
Basically an empty data center.
Right.
With the basic infrastructure in place.
Okay.
You need to bring your own equipment and data.
Oh.
So it takes longer to get up and running.
Right.
But it's definitely the most budget-friendly option.
So it's like having a backup generator versus relying on candles when the power goes out.
That's a great analogy.
What about that middle ground?
Right.
Those warm sites?
Warm sites offer a balance.
Okay.
They have the hardware and software, but they're not actively running.
Right.
It takes some time to activate them.
Okay.
But it's faster than setting up a cold site from scratch.
Okay, so it's all about finding the right balance between cost and recovery time.
Exactly.
But these DR sites aren't just about physical location, right?
That's a good point.
We also need to think about how our data gets there.
Absolutely. The CCSP will likely ask about data replication and geographical considerations.
Right.
You don't want your backup data sitting in the same city as your primary data center, vulnerable to the same risks.
Makes total sense. It's about spreading that risk.
It is.
So what are our options for getting those backups to the DR site?
Well, you can physically transport tapes or disks.
Okay.
But that's slow and cumbersome.
Yeah.
More common these days is site replication,
Okay.
where data is continuously mirrored to the DR site over the network.
Okay.
The CCSP might ask you about the different types of replication and their impact on RPO and RTO.
Okay, so lots to unpack there.
There is.
And then there's the choice between online and offline backups, right? Isn't online always better? Online backups are great for fast recovery, but they require more storage and bandwidth.
Okay.
Offline backups, like those tapes or disks we talked about, are less expensive and less vulnerable to cyber attacks. But they require manual intervention to restore.
Okay, so yet another trade-off to consider.
Always trade-off.
This is a lot to keep straight.
It is a lot.
But it's clear that having a well-defined DR plan is crucial.
It is.
What else does the CCSP want us to know about making sure those plans actually work?
Good question.
When we need them.
That's the million-dollar question.
Okay.
A plan is only as good as its execution.
Right.
And that's where testing comes in.
Okay.
The CCSP wants to see that you understand the importance of regularly testing your DR plans and making adjustments as needed.
Testing. So it's not just about writing up a plan and hoping for the best.
Not at all.
Okay.
You need to verify that your backups are working.
Right. Your failover mechanisms are in place.
Okay.
And your teams know what to do when the alarm bells go off.
Okay.
The CCSP will likely ask about the different types of DR tests and when to use them.
Okay. Bring on the test types.
All right.
I'm ready to learn how to put these plans through their paces.
There are several types of tests,
Yeah,
ranging from simple to complex.
Yeah.
The simplest is a read-through.
Okay.
Basically, everyone involved in the DR plan reviews their responsibilities and provides feedback.
Okay.
Then you have walkthroughs, also known as tabletop exercises, where the team gathers and talks through how they'd respond to a specific disaster scenario.
So it's like a dress rehearsal for the apocalypse.
It is.
But without the actual explosions and zombies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These walkthroughs are great for identifying gaps in the plan.
Right.
And practicing communication and coordination.
Right.
But to really put your systems to the test,
Yeah.
you need to move beyond simulations.
Okay, so what's next on the testing ladder?
That would be parallel tests.
Okay.
You actually spin up your DR environment and run it alongside your primary systems.
Okay.
This lets you test your failover capabilities and data replication processes without disrupting normal operations.
That sounds like a smart way to find out if things are working as they should.
It is.
But I'm guessing the CCSP wants us to go even further, right?
They do the ultimate test.
Okay.
Is the full interruption test.
Oh, wow.
You completely shut down your primary systems and try to run everything from your DR site.
Oh, my gosh.
This is the most realistic test,
Right.
but it's also the most disruptive.
Yeah. I can see why that one's not done very often.
No,
It's like pulling the fire alarm to see if everyone knows the evacuation route.
Exactly. Most organizations use a mix of test types.
Right.
starting with frequent read-throughs and walkthroughs, and then gradually increasing the complexity and frequency of simulations and parallel tests. Full interruption tests are typically reserved for critical systems and are conducted very carefully and strategically.
So testing is an ongoing process.
It is.
Not a one-time event.
Right.
And it sounds like the CCSP really wants us to understand those different levels of testing and when to use them.
Absolutely.
What else do they want us to master
when
it comes to keeping those cloud systems safe and sound?
Well, next up, we have security operations.
Okay.
This is where we shift from planning for disasters to actually defending against those everyday threats lurking in the digital shadows.
Okay, so we're talking about the front lines of cybersecurity.
Where?
The people, processes, and technologies that keep those cloud environments safe from hackers and malware.
Exactly.
What does the CCSP want us to know about security operations in the cloud?
First and foremost, they want you to understand that security operations in the cloud are fundamentally different from traditional on-premise security operations. We're dealing with distributed systems, shared responsibility models, and a constantly evolving threat landscape.
So it's like comparing fighting a fire in a single building to fighting a wildfire that's spreading across a vast forest.
Good analogy.
The scale and complexity are entirely different.
Exactly. And one of the biggest challenges in cloud security operations is visibility. You need to have a clear understanding of what's happening in your cloud environment. Who has access to what data is flowing, what changes are being made. Without that visibility, you're flying blind.
That makes sense if you can't see what's going on. You can't protect it.
Exactly.
But how do you achieve that visibility?
Good question.
In a complex cloud environment, where resources are constantly being created, modified, and deleted.
That's where cloud security monitoring tools come in. These tools collect logs and events from various cloud services, analyze them for suspicious activity.
Got it.
And alert security teams to potential threats.
Okay, so we're leveraging technology to automate those monitoring and detection tasks. That seems crucial in a dynamic cloud environment.
It is.
But what happens when an alert goes off? That's where incident response comes in, right?
Absolutely. Incident response is all about having a plan in place to quickly and effectively handle security incidents. And in the cloud, that plan needs to be adapted to the unique challenges of cloud environments. The CCSP will definitely want to see that you understand those nuances.
Okay, so what makes cloud incident response different from traditional incident response? So what are the key things we need to consider?
Well, for starters, you need to consider the shared responsibility model. Who's responsible for investigating and responding to different types of incidents. The cloud provider or the customer, that needs to be clearly defined in your incident response plan.
It's about knowing who does what.
Yes.
And having those lines of communication established.
Absolutely.
What else is different about cloud incident response? What are the unique challenges we need to be prepared for?
Speed is even more critical in the cloud. Attackers can move quickly and exploit vulnerabilities before you even know they're there.
Oh, gosh.
So your incident response plan needs to be streamlined and agile. You need to be able to quickly assess the situation, contain the damage, and eradicate the threat.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly.
It's about having the tools, processes, and skills in place to respond to incidents quickly and decisively.
Exactly. But even with the best monitoring and incident response, you can't prevent every attack, right? What happens when an attacker gains a foothold in your cloud environment? What steps should we take to figure out what happened and how to prevent it from happening again?
That's where forensic investigations come in.
Exactly. It's about piecing together the puzzle, figuring out what happened, how the attacker got in, what data was compromised, and what steps need to be taken to contain the damage and prevent future attacks.
Forensic investigations. That sounds intense.
It can be.
Is this something that organizations typically handle themselves?
It depends.
Or do they bring in outside experts?
Some organizations have dedicated in-house forensic teams, while others rely on third-party specialists. But regardless of who's doing it, cloud forensics is a critical part of incident response and recovery.
So we've got visibility monitoring, Incident response and forensics.
Got it.
It seems like there's a lot to juggle in cloud security operations.
There is.
What are some key takeaways for someone studying for the CCSP?
All right, so key takeaways.
What are the essential things
Let's see.
they need to understand about this domain?
Well, first and foremost, understand the shared responsibility model.
Right.
Know what you're responsible for
Right.
and what the cloud provider is responsible for when it comes to security operations.
Right.
Second, prioritize visibility.
Right.
You need to be able to see what's happening in your cloud environment in order to protect it.
Yeah, okay.
And third, have a solid incident response plan in place.
Okay.
And practice it regularly.
Got it.
You need to be prepared to handle security incidents quickly and effectively.
Those are some great points.
I think so.
So we've talked about business continuity, disaster recovery, and security operations.
Yep, we have.
What other critical areas are covered in the CCSP exam?
So,
What else do we need to study?
well, legal and compliance is a big one.
Oh, right, of course.
Cloud computing introduces a whole new set of legal and regulatory challenges,
Okay.
especially when it comes to data privacy and security.
Okay.
The CCSP will definitely test your knowledge in this area.
That makes sense with data potentially stored in multiple locations around the world.
Yeah.
Things can get complicated quickly.
They can.
What are some key considerations in this area?
So key considerations.
What do we need to know to ensure we're on the right side of the law
Okay.
and protecting sensitive information?
You need to understand the different data privacy regulations that apply to your organization,
Right,
such
fine.
as GDPR, CCPA, and HIPAA.
Okay.
These regulations have specific requirements for how personal data
Right.
must be collected, processed, stored, and protected.
Right.
You also need to consider data sovereignty,
Okay.
the laws and regulations that govern data within specific geographic boundaries.
So it's not just about protecting data from hackers.
No?
It's about protecting it from legal repercussions as well.
Exactly.
That's a whole other level of complexity.
It is.
What else should we be thinking about
Let's see.
when it comes to legal and compliance in the cloud?
Contract negotiation is also crucial
Okay.
when you're using cloud services.
You're essentially entering into a contract with the provider.
Right.
You need to carefully review those contracts
Okay.
to understand your rights and responsibilities,
Okay.
especially when it comes to data security and privacy.
Okay.
Don't just assume that the cloud provider has everything covered.
Right.
You need to protect your own interests.
Right.
Ensure that your data is handled responsibly.
Okay. So due diligence is key.
It is.
We need to read the fine print and make sure those contracts align with our organization's security and compliance requirements.
Exactly. What are some key things to look for in a cloud service contract?
Okay.
What are the red flags
Yeah.
that should make us pause and ask more questions?
Okay. What should we be looking out for?
Make sure the contract clearly defines the provider's security obligations
Okay.
and your right to audit their security practices.
Got it.
You also want to ensure that the contract addresses
Okay.
data breach notification and liability in case something goes wrong.
And pay close attention to data location and transfer provisions,
Okay.
especially if data sovereignty is a concern.
So it's about being proactive and protecting ourselves from potential risks.
Absolutely.
We can't just blindly trust the cloud provider to handle everything perfectly.
Yep.
We have a responsibility to understand the legal and contractual implications of using cloud services.
Exactly. And speaking of handling data responsibly,
Okay.
let's move on to another critical area of cloud security, data security and privacy.
Right.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
The actual protection of sensitive information in the cloud.
Okay. Data security and privacy.
Yeah,
This is at the heart of everything we've been talking about, right?
it is.
It's about protecting sensitive information and ensuring that it's used appropriately and ethically.
Exactly.
What does the CCSP expect us to know about this crucial domain?
The CCSP wants you to understand that data security and privacy in the cloud
Okay.
are paramount.
Right.
We're dealing with massive amounts of data stored in distributed environments, often across multiple jurisdictions.
Right.
The stakes are higher and the challenges are more complex
Okay.
than in traditional on-premises environments.
So we need to up our game when it comes to protecting data in the cloud.
We do.
What are some key considerations?
So,
What are the essential practices and technologies that we need to master?
well, first and foremost,
Okay.
you need to encrypt your data.
All right.
This is essential for protecting data at rest and in transit.
Okay.
You also need to implement strong access controls.
Yeah.
to limit who can access sensitive information.
Okay.
These are foundational security principles that apply to any environment, but they're even more critical in the cloud.
Encryption and access controls.
Got it.
Those are the basics. But what about the cloud-specific challenges we need to address?
So cloud-specific.
What else should we be thinking about?
Data loss prevention, or DLP, is crucial.
Okay, DLP.
This involves monitoring and controlling the movement of sensitive data to prevent unauthorized access or exfiltration. Think of it as a security guard for your data, making sure it doesn't leave the premises without proper authorization.
So it's about preventing data leaks.
Yep.
And ensuring that sensitive information stays where it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
What are some common DLP techniques?
So common techniques.
How do we implement this security guard for our data?
You can use network-based DLP solutions to monitor traffic for sensitive data patterns, like credit card numbers or social security numbers. You can also use endpoint-based DLP to prevent users from copying or transferring sensitive files to unauthorized devices or locations.
Got it.
And cloud providers often offer built-in DLP capabilities as part of their security services.
Okay, so we have multiple layers of protection we can put in place to keep that data safe. But what happens if, despite our best efforts, a data breach occurs?
Okay, so data breach.
What steps should we take to contain the damage? Notify the appropriate parties and recover from the incident.
That's where your incident response plan comes into play. You need to contain the breach and prevent further damage. Investigate the incident to determine the root cause and the extent of the compromise. And comply with all applicable data breach notification laws and regulations. And just as important, you need to communicate transparently with affected individuals and other stakeholders.
Transparency is key in these situations.
Absolutely.
It's about building trust. And demonstrating that you're taking the breach seriously.
Yes, but even beyond legal and ethical obligations, there's a business imperative to protect data, Data breaches can have serious consequences for an organization's reputation and bottom line.
Absolutely. Data breaches can damage your reputation, erode customer trust, and result in significant financial losses.
They can.
So investing in data security and privacy is not just a compliance requirement.
No.
It's a smart business decision.
It is.
The CCSP will want you to understand these broader implications.
Definitely.
It's data security and privacy.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Wow.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From business continuity to security operations to legal and compliance to data security and privacy.
Important topics.
It's clear that cloud security is a complex and multifaceted field.
It is.
What are your final thoughts for someone preparing for the CCSP exam?
Final thoughts.
What are the essential things they need to keep in mind as they continue their studies?
Well, I'd say focus on understanding the big picture first. How all these different concepts fit together to create a comprehensive cloud security strategy.
Got it.
Then dive into the details. Studying the specific technologies, processes, and best practices. Remember, the CCSP exam tests your ability to apply your knowledge to real-world scenarios. So don't just memorize facts. Understand the WHY behind them.
Great advice. It's about seeing the forest and the trees.
It is.
Any other study tips?
Sure.
What helped you prepare for the CCSP exam?
Don't just read the material. Practice applying it. Work through scenarios, test your knowledge, and try to think like a cloud security professional. The CCSP exam is challenging, but it's achievable with dedicated effort and preparation.
Those are words of wisdom.
I try.
Okay, before we wrap up this section, let's shift gears one last time and talk about cloud architecture and infrastructure security.
Perfect.
This is where we get into the nuts and bolts of how cloud environments are built and secured.
This is where we really get into the technical details of securing the foundation of your cloud operations.
Okay, I'm ready to get technical.
Let's do it now.
What are some key concepts we need to understand in this area?
Key concepts.
What does the CCSP want us to know about building and securing cloud infrastructure?
Well, first off, you need to grasp the different cloud service models. Infrastructure as a service, IS. Platform as a service, PaaS, and software as a service.
Okay.
Each model offers different levels of abstraction and control.
Okay.
And each comes with its own security considerations.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
IS,
Yep.
That's the most basic level, right?
It is.
You're essentially renting virtualized hardware from the cloud provider, like server storage and networking.
Exactly. You're responsible for managing the operating system's applications and data.
Right.
So you have a lot of flexibility and control.
Okay.
But you also have a lot of responsibility for security.
Right.
The CCSP will want you to understand the security implications of this model.
Got it. Yeah. So it's like building a house from the ground up.
Good analogy.
You have complete control over the design and construction.
Right.
But you're also responsible for making sure it's secure.
Exactly. What about PaaS?
Okay, PaaS provides a platform for developing and deploying applications.
It does.
The cloud provider manages the underlying infrastructure while you focus on building and running your apps.
Yep.
This simplifies things from a security perspective.
It does.
But you still need to be aware of the shared responsibility model.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have less control, but also less responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like renting an apartment.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about maintaining the building.
Right.
But you still need to lock your door and be mindful of security.
Exactly. And then there's SaaS.
And SaaS.
The most hands-off approach.
Right.
SaaS delivers fully functional applications over the internet.
Okay.
The cloud provider handles everything.
Wow.
The infrastructure, the platform, the application, and the data.
Okay.
This is the most convenient option from a security standpoint. But you still need to understand how the provider is securing your data.
Okay.
And what your options are for controlling access and managing risk.
So regardless of which cloud service model you choose, security is a shared responsibility.
It is.
You always have a role to play.
Absolutely.
In protecting your data and applications.
And that role often involves understanding and implementing secure cloud architecture principles.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay.
What are some key principles?
That'd be key principles.
For building secure cloud architectures?
Let me think.
What are the best practices that we need to follow to create a solid foundation for cloud security?
One of the most important is defense in depth.
Okay. Defense in depth.
This means having multiple layers of security controls in place to protect your cloud environment.
Okay.
Think of it like a castle with multiple walls and moats.
Okay.
It's much harder for an attacker to penetrate multiple layers of defense.
So it's about having a layered approach.
Yeah.
Not just relying on a single point of failure.
Exactly.
What are some examples of those different layers?
So different layers.
What kinds of security controls should we be implementing?
You might have network security controls, like firewalls and intrusion detection systems to protect your perimeter and monitor for suspicious activity.
Okay.
You might have identity and access management controls to control who can access what resources.
Right.
And you might have data security controls, like encryption and data loss prevention to protect sensitive information.
Okay.
And don't forget about logging and monitoring to detect and respond to security incidents.
Host?
To detect and respond to security incidents.
It's all about creating a web of protection, a multi-layered defense that makes it difficult for attackers to penetrate.
Right.
Exactly. And another key principle is least privilege.
Least privilege.
This means granting users and systems only the permissions they need to do their jobs and nothing more. Okay, so it's about limiting access to sensitive information and resources.
Right.
Thereby reducing the potential damage if an account is compromised.
Exactly.
Makes sense. What other secure cloud architecture principles
does
the CCSP want us to know about?
That ties into another important principle, separation of duties.
Separation of duties.
This means dividing sensitive tasks among multiple individuals to prevent any one person from having too much power or access.
So it's about checks and balances.
It is.
Making sure that no one person can make unauthorized changes or access sensitive data without being detected.
Exactly.
These are all great principles.
They are.
But how do we actually implement them in a cloud environment?
Good question.
It seems like there are so many different tools and services to choose from.
There are.
So many.
That's where cloud-specific security tools and services come in.
Okay.
Cloud providers offer a wide range of security capabilities that you can leverage to build and manage secure cloud architectures. The CCSP will expect you to be familiar with these tools and services.
Okay, so we're not on our own here.
Not at all.
The cloud providers are giving us the tools we need to secure our environments.
They are. What are some examples of those cloud security tools?
Yeah. What should we be looking for
Okay, so example.
when we're evaluating these options?
Well, you have identity and access management services
Right.
that allow you to control who has access to what cloud resources.
Okay.
You have security groups and network access control lists
Yeah.
that allow you to control traffic flow within your cloud environment.
Okay.
You have encryption services
Right.
that allow you to protect your data at rest and in transit.
Okay.
And you have logging and monitoring services
Right.
that allow you to track activity and detect potential security threats.
It sounds like we have a lot of options.
We do.
But with so many different tools and services available, it can be overwhelming to know where to start.
It can be overwhelming.
What advice do you have for someone who's just beginning their cloud security journey?
Okay, good question.
How do we make sense of all this complexity?
Start by understanding the basics of cloud security architecture
Okay.
and the shared responsibility model.
Right.
Then familiarize yourself with the security capabilities offered by your chosen cloud provider.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
There are many resources available,
Yeah?
including online communities, training courses, and security consultants.
That's great advice. It's about taking it one step at a time
It is.
and building your knowledge and skills gradually.
Absolutely.
And remember, cloud security is a journey, not a destination.
So true.
It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and evolving
Yes.
as the threat landscape changes.
Well said. And speaking of adapting and evolving,
Okay.
let's talk about another important aspect of cloud security, vulnerability management.
Okay, vulnerability management.
This is where we get proactive and try to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
Okay, so this is about finding and fixing weaknesses in our systems
It is.
before the bad guys can exploit them.
Right? Exactly. It's like patching a hole in your roof before it starts raining.
Right, exactly. And in the cloud,
Yes.
vulnerability management takes on a whole new level of complexity.
It does. We're dealing with constantly evolving software,
Right.
dynamic environments, and shared responsibility models.
So it's even more challenging than traditional on-premises vulnerability management.
It can be.
What are some key things to keep in mind?
Let's see. Key thing.
What are the unique challenges we need to be prepared for in the cloud?
Well, first off,
okay.
you need to understand the different types of vulnerabilities that can exist in cloud environments.
Right.
You have traditional software vulnerabilities,
Right.
but you also have cloud-specific vulnerabilities
True.
related to misconfigurations, insecure APIs,
Okay.
and weak identity and access management controls.
So it's not just about patching software.
No.
It's about securing the entire cloud stack.
It is.
From the infrastructure to the applications to the data.
All of it.
We need to be thinking about security at every level.
Exactly. And you need to have a continuous vulnerability management process in place.
Okay, a continuous process.
This means regularly scanning your cloud environment for vulnerabilities,
Okay.
assessing the risks, and taking steps to remediate them.
So it's an ongoing cycle
It is.
of scan, assess, and remediate.
Exactly. But how do we actually scan for vulnerabilities in the cloud?
Yeah, are there specialized tools for that?
There are.
Okay.
There are cloud-specific vulnerability scanners
Okay.
that are designed to identify weaknesses in cloud environments.
Okay.
And cloud providers often offer built-in vulnerability scanning capabilities
Oh, okay.
as part of their security services.
Okay, so we have the tools we need to find those vulnerabilities.
We do.
But once we've identified them,
Okay.
how do we prioritize them and decide which ones to fix first?
That's a good question.
It seems like we could easily be overwhelmed
Yeah.
by the sheer number of potential vulnerabilities.
That's where vulnerability assessment comes in.
Okay, vulnerability assessment.
You need to assess the risk associated with each vulnerability
Okay.
based on factors like the severity of the vulnerability, the potential impact of an exploit,
Right.
and the likelihood of an attack.
So it's about focusing on the most critical vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
The ones that pose the greatest risk to our organization.
Right.
And then we need to remediate those vulnerabilities, right?
We do.
What does that involve?
Remediation can involve patching software,
Okay.
reconfiguring systems,
Right.
or implementing compensating controls.
Okay.
And it's important to track your progress
Yeah.
and ensure that vulnerabilities are addressed in a timely manner.
So it's about having a systematic approach to vulnerability management,
It is.
a process for identifying, assessing, and remediating weaknesses in our cloud environment.
Exactly. But even with the best vulnerability management program,
Right.
we can't prevent every attack, right? There's always going to be that element of risk.
Right. Attackers are constantly finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities.
They are.
So we need to be prepared to respond to incidents and recover from attacks.
And that brings us back to incident response and disaster recovery.
Yeah.
The essential elements of a comprehensive cloud security strategy.
It's all connected.
It is. It's all connected. And that's what makes the CCSP such a valuable certification.
Right.
It covers all the key aspects of cloud security,
Yeah.
giving you a holistic understanding of how to protect your organization in the cloud.
Well said. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive,
Right.
let's shift gears one last time.
Okay, one last time.
And talk about another critical area of cloud security identity and access management.
Perfect.
This is where we really get into the heart of controlling who has access to what in the cloud.
This is where we really get into the heart of controlling who has access to what in the cloud.
Okay, identity and access management.
Yeah.
Or IAM, as the cool kids call it. This is about making sure that only authorized users can access sensitive data and resources, right?
Exactly. It's like having a bouncer at the door of your cloud environment.
Okay.
Checking IDs and making sure only the right people get in.
Exactly. IAM is all about managing identities and permissions in the cloud.
It is.
It's about controlling who can do what, where, and when.
That's IAM in a nutshell.
So it's about making sure that the right people have the right access and no one else.
Yeah. But in the cloud, IAM can get pretty complex, right?
It can.
We're dealing with multiple users, applications, and services,
Right.
all potentially accessing resources across different cloud environments.
You're absolutely right. Cloud IAM involves a lot more than just managing user accounts and passwords.
Oh, a lot more.
We need to consider things like federated identity, multi-factor authentication, and role-based access control.
All important concepts.
Okay, let's break those down.
Right.
Federated identity. That's about sharing identities across different organizations or systems, right?
Exactly. It's like having a universal passport that lets you travel between different countries without having to go through customs every time.
Right.
It allows users to access resources in multiple cloud environments
Right.
without having to create separate accounts and passwords for each one.
Right.
This can be really helpful for organizations that use a mix of cloud services or that need to collaborate with external partners.
So it's about streamlining access and simplifying identity management.
It is. What about multi-factor authentication?
Multi-factor authentication.
That's all about adding extra layers of security, right?
Right. It's like having a deadbolt on your door.
Good analogy.
In addition to a regular lock.
Exactly. MFA requires users to provide multiple forms of authentication, such as a password and a one-time code sent to their phone or email.
Right.
This makes it much harder for attackers to gain unauthorized access.
Right.
Even if they manage to steal a password.
So it's about making it as difficult as possible for the bad guys to get in.
It is. And what about role-based access control?
Role-based access control.
How does that work?
Yeah, is it like assigning different levels of access?
It is.
Based on someone's job title?
RBAC is all about granting permissions based on a user's role or job function.
Okay.
Instead of assigning permissions to individual users,
Right.
you create roles that represent different levels of access.
Okay.
And then you assign users to those roles.
Got it.
This simplifies permission management
Right.
and ensures that users only have the access they need to do their jobs.
Okay, so it's about grouping users with similar needs and assigning permissions accordingly.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, but with so many different IAM concepts and technologies, it can be tough to know where to start.
It can.
What advice do you have for someone who's new to Cloud IAM?
So new to Cloud IAM.
What are the essential things they need to understand?
Start by understanding the basics of identity and access management,
Okay.
including key concepts like authentication authorization and auditing. Then familiarize yourself with the IAM services offered by your chosen cloud provider.
Okay, so learn the fundamentals.
Yes.
And then explore the specific tools and services available.
Exactly.
What else should we keep in mind?
Let me think.
What are some common pitfalls to avoid?
Don't try to do everything at once. Start with a small, manageable scope.
Right.
And gradually expand your IAM implementation as you gain experience and confidence.
Okay.
And don't forget about the importance of ongoing monitoring and auditing.
Right.
You need to regularly review your IAM policies and procedures to ensure that they're still effective.
Yeah.
And that you're complying with all applicable security and compliance requirements.
Great advice.
Yeah.
It's about taking a phased approach, starting small,
Yep.
And continuously monitoring and improving your IAM posture.
Exactly.
And it sounds like the CCSP will want to see that we understand these practical considerations.
They will.
All right.
Exactly. And remember, IAM is a foundational element of cloud security. If you don't get IAM right, everything else you do to secure your cloud environment could be undermined.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about business continuity, disaster recovery, security operations, legal and compliance, data security and privacy, cloud architecture, and infrastructure security, vulnerability management.
We've covered it all.
And identity and access management. What a whirlwind tour of cloud security.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has, and we've only just scratched the surface.
We have. Cloud security is a vast and constantly evolving field.
It is, but with the right knowledge, skills, and mindset,
yes,
you can navigate the challenges and protect your organization in the cloud.
Absolutely. And the CCSP exam is a great way to demonstrate your expertise in this critical area.
Absolutely.
So for those of you studying for the exam, keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Your efforts will pay off.
I love that encouragement. We've covered so much ground today.
We have.
But I know there's always more to learn in the ever-changing world of cloud security.
The field is constantly evolving, and that's what makes it so exciting.
It is.
There's always a new challenge to tackle a new technology, to master a new way to improve security.
It is exciting.
Sure.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive into the world of CCSP prep,
okay,
let's distill some key takeaways for our listeners.
All right, key takeaways.
What are the absolute must-knows for anyone tackling this beast of an exam?
You've hit the nail on the head with that beast comment.
It's a beast.
But it's a conquerable beast with the right approach.
Okay.
I'd say the most fundamental concept is understanding the shared responsibility model.
Right.
It weaves through everything in cloud security.
Right. It's knowing what you control versus what the cloud provider manages.
Exactly.
I can see how the CCSP exam would hammer that point home.
Oh, they do.
What else?
Master those core security principles.
Okay.
Defense in depth, least privilege separation of duties.
Okay.
These are the bedrock of a secure cloud environment, regardless of the specific technologies you're using.
Okay, so foundational concepts are crucial.
They are.
But we've also covered a ton of specific domains.
Yeah, a lot of domains.
Business continuity, disaster recovery, IAM, legal compliance.
Yep.
How should someone even approach studying all of that?
Don't just try to memorize every detail.
Okay.
Focus on the WHY behind the concepts.
Okay.
The CCSP exam wants to see if you can apply that knowledge to real-world scenarios.
Right.
Not just parrot-back definitions.
So critical thinking is key.
It is.
It's not enough to know what a hot site is.
Right.
You need to understand why it's the right choice in a specific situation.
Exactly.
Any of the tips for our listener?
Sure.
Who's bravely facing this exam?
Practice, practice, practice.
Practice.
Use practice exams.
Right.
Work through those scenarios.
Yeah.
Really put yourself in the mindset of a cloud security professional.
Okay.
The more you apply what you're learning,
right,
the more confident you'll become.
That's fantastic advice. And I have to say, going through this deep dive with you has even solidified my own understanding of cloud security. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. It's always exciting to see that aha moment when someone grasps these complex concepts.
Absolutely. Okay, before we sign off, I have one final thought-provoking question.
Okay, shoot.
For our listener, something to ponder as they continue on this CCSP journey.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the technical side of cloud security.
We have.
But what about the human element?
Ooh, good one.
How do you build a strong security culture
Right.
within an organization that's embracing the cloud?
That's a brilliant question, and it deserves a deep dive of its own.
It does, because technology is only as good as the people using it.
Absolutely.
Totally. To our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into CCSP exam prep.
Yes, thanks for listening.
We know you've got a lot of work ahead of you, but we're confident that you'll conquer that exam
I am too.
and become a true cloud security champion.
You got this.
Best of luck with your studies.
Thank you.
And remember, the world needs skilled cloud security professionals now more than ever.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep growing, and keep making the cloud a safer place for everyone.
Well said.
Beautifully said. Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.